G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. Ukraine war update for the 15th of September 2025. I'm going to endeavour to bring you unbiased, unfiltered, uncensored, I should say, news on the current state of the Ukraine war. Now I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are sick and tired of the Ukraine war. The war of words, the battle in the media, but the war is taking its toll on the governments of France. Their country is bankrupt. England is bankrupt. Germany is on the verge of bankruptcy. What does it look like when a country goes bankrupt? Look at China. Look at Greece. Governments become unstable. They have to cut pensions. They have to stop. What amazes me is it's so easy to prevent. But because some politicians would rather buy your vote, and so many on the left are just so selfish that they just keep wanting more for free, thinking that they're entitled to everything to be just given to them without any contribution. It's not like they can't contribute. But they don't want to contribute. They don't want to have children. They don't want to get married. They don't want to have families. And the only reason why they work is because they can get all these benefits. I mean, most of them only have a child to get out of work. And it's bankrupting the country with health care and childcare, because everything is always put it to the state. Oh, my child's not learning. Spend more money on schooling. More money doesn't fix a kid who won't learn. And if you can't sit down and explain to your child, but no, if you keep coddling bad behavior, you eventually create a child who is arrogant, entitled, emotional, and then when the emotional people don't get their way, they lash out, and we end up with situations where you have entire countries lashing out at their population, and nobody wanting the truth. So many people, one thing I've learned about doing these videos, most people want comfortable lies. They don't want the truth. They want to be entertained, not informed. And time again, I see the same stories out of Ukraine. The Russians only kill civilians. The Russians have only attacked civilian infrastructure. At least with some media, you get to find out both sides of the story, where Ukraine is firing drones into Russia. That there are explosions and deaths on the Russian side. But they never tell you or show you the situation fully in Ukraine. Now, this is known as the Vietnam War syndrome. They're afraid to show you war because they are afraid you'll turn against them. The Russian Ministry of Defense put out a statement where they said they intercepted 361 Ukrainian drones and 4 aerial bombs and some rockets from American HIMARS in the last 24 hours. There's apparently a digital attack on the Russian election system. Now, there is diplomacy going on. Donald Trump has said he is willing to impose more sanctions on Russia, but Europe has to step up and stop buying Russian oil. He's basically saying, and what I interpret anyway, my opinion is Trump is saying, you're using us as leverage against Russia to get more out of them. If you really want sanctions on Russia, you have to stop. You have to do it. Because that's the reality, isn't it? Europe knows sanctions hurts. So they get US to do the sanctions to hurt the US economy, to hurt the Russian economy, and to force the Russians to sell to Europe for more. Europe is trying to play good cop, bad cop, and get the United States to play the bad cop. Trump has told them to stop, and they won't. Everybody is saber-rattling, but the reality is they're doing so from dying economies, and Russia's sitting back and saying, well, if we just hold out, your economies will die, and we'll be in a better position. Every day, people are dying because Macron and his supporters are full of pride. Keir Starmer and his supporters are full of pride. Merkel 2.0 in Germany is nothing but a muppet. You know why people like you and I don't become presidents or even prime ministers or ministers or even just representatives? Because we tell the truth. Our supporters don't want us to tell the truth. Our supporters want us to confirm their biases. The other side, our side wants us to demonise the other side. The other side wants to demonise us. They don't want somebody to come in and say, Ukraine's none of our business. Ukraine is not our ally, they're China's ally. Let them sort it out. Meanwhile, the oligarchs, they go around stirring the people by coming up with what his excuses saying. He doesn't care, the devil whispering in people's ears, saying, things like he doesn't care. Oh, but Ukraine, we can't abandon Ukraine. They got human rights and all this other manipulation until they froth people at the mouth and have you racing in to allegedly free the oppressed from the Russian aggressor. But wait a minute. People say, but why would tiny Ukraine start a war with big old weenie Russia? Well, wait a minute. Japan started a war with the United States. Vietnam stood up to you. And they actually won, mostly because of the people in the United States helping the US undermine the war effort. This war would have been over if it was for the left, both undermining the war effort, Ukraine being run by bumbling idiots, and the entire world ignoring the fact that Ukraine went to war since 2014. Ukraine has been at war with its own citizenry. And that, remember folks, when the United States invaded Iraq, why is that different from Russia invading Ukraine? Oh, because it's Russia. That's right. Russia. We get off this merry-go-round. It is so easy. Because we can bring pressure to bear to end this war. We can get Russia to end this war. Now, I have my own theories. And some of them have been proven right, and others haven't come to fruition yet. I said often the European economies will collapse over Ukraine. They will kill themselves over Ukraine. And it's deliberate. The European governments rely so much, okay? You look how much it costs to run for President of the United States. You look how much it costs to run for government in any country. Most of that money goes to the media. How do you think the mainstream media makes its money? You think it's advertising? No, it's politics. It's buying the media. The left has bought the media. The left buys off NGOs. NGOs created the mess in Ukraine. They ignored child trafficking in Ukraine. They ignored government corruption and incompetence. Europe, in its obsession to get its hands on more minerals and more resources instead of making do what they got and recycling, getting more efficient, spending more, and making life easier for its people instead of obsessing about childcare and nursing homes for the elderly and many other social projects which don't earn money, that drain resources, that should be the responsibility of the people, not of the government. But so many people want to alleviate themselves of responsibility so they have more free time to do what? What are most people doing with their free time? Glued to the idiot box. Turning off their brains and filling it with junk. Most people will look at the map and not even realise how many of these stories are repeated from yesterday, how many are bloated exaggerations, or how many lack information. We know there was a trail derailment in Ukraine. However, that was a day ago. Why are they still... The news of the day should be the news of the day, not unidentified explosive device. Yeah, but it could have been Ukrainian. It could have been from falling drones. Do they clean up? How many drones have they really shot down? And most of them are these fixed-wing surveillance drones. Why are there glide bombs on these locations? They're not random. We may never know the truth. We know may eventually be years before we read stories about why Russia created the buffer zones where they have and why they didn't advance. The strategy behind, now there's a little bit of movement apparently. This has grown in size. These are just assaults on Ukrainian positions on the borders. These are just pot shots. However, there's a serious combat situation going on in Kupiansk. Assault forces in other areas as well. And apparently Ukrainian clashes with Ukrainians also. Most of the time, north of Lyman, the Russians are at it. Pardon me. Now, I theorise that Russia could be pushing to Izium to cut off the supply lines. They could do that. Or that could be a feint to get the Ukrainians to retreat troops up to this road. Or draw more troops from these areas up to Lyman so they can take Zavesk. Right. Pardon me. Now, I think that this is generals go around the table with Putin and they put forward their theories. And then Putin looks at them all in the eye and says the same thing every day. Which situation do we have the arms and munitions for in place? Can we take Seversk? Not yet. And it's okay. Put that on the wear them down list. Can we take Lyman? We're not there yet. Bang. How far away from Ismath? Can we advance? Well, there's a bunch of trench lines in the way. So that gets put on the back burner. And then they go through the reasons why they can't get to Lyman. So they say, right, there's all these men and machines back here in reserve. There's rockets. Wear that down. But then they say, oh, there's also aircraft. Okay, go after the drones and fixed wings and all that. And then they say, oh, but there's also the southern flank, and so they have to go after that. And with the southern flank having favourable conditions, they have most of the men and machines, so they get most of the ammunition. So the guys up here are told to make do, and if they can advance on one side, advance. If they can advance on the other side, advance on that side. That's my theory. That there is no... that there's only overall arcing goals, no fixed goals. As you can see, some of these are actually older. Some are 2 days ago, some a day ago, some more recently. So it tells you, well, 2 minutes ago, 20 explosions. So there you go. First time we've actually had something more, and is there video? Nope. Video doesn't work. Oh, wait. That actually might work. Nope. Media not supported. Every time it does that. It's okay. North of Javishan there's less priority, I believe. Right. There's been very little progress down here for a while, but there has been a lot of activity and a lot of fighting has resumed on multiple positions along the front. Here they've formed Cauldron and going after the curve. They haven't resolved Renensk or Krynitsky Noyin, and there's still combat along this area as well as Novokenkishi. Russia's taken some positions back, but not many. Still fighting over pushing for Pavosk, while in other areas they are still pursuing other combat missions. There's been a little bit of movement here in the front, but not much. Again, as I said, I've said this long time that they were going to pass through here to cut, so that they would basically cut the Ukrainians off from moving men and up to the border down here. Same with here, they're going to push round through here, basically to cut this off. And through here, as again, if you zoom out a bit, they're going to go straight across here. They're not going down, they're going straight across here to cut all this off down here. Heading straight for Zaporozhye. So they may cut under, or they may go through. Either way, to cut this off, right? We know the goals of the Russian army. They've said it quite often. They started with Lugansk and Donetsk. Then, to secure Crimea, they secured the Kherson corridor, basically to secure the road through Mariupol through to Sevastopol. However, a lot of the water power is coming from Zaporozhye. Ukrainian attacks from Kherson and Mykolaiv. Russia expanded the special operation, right? Because now the difference between a special operation and a war is nuance. But the whole point of special operation is a war, you're out to capture and or destroy the enemy. In the special operation, they're only liberating, or like the special operation against Serbia and Kosovo, they're only taking a Pacific territory. And Russia has yet to formalize whether or not they're if they're going to expand it past a few buffer zones and how far. But however, they have offered to limit to Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye. Only, however, when it comes to Zaporozhye and Kherson, they're willing to cut the rest off, freeze the front. That they'll only take the rest of Donetsk. People, of course, keep saying unacceptable, unacceptable. Every offer Russia puts on the table is unacceptable. Every time Zelensky says, complete withdrawal of all the Russians, everybody cheers like clap seals and says, we're the coalition at the winning, we're going to stand with you until the end of time, and all this other false promises. Promises they can't keep. The people are sick and tired of Ukraine. People are sick and tired of Ukraine being put first. People are sick and tired of the left wagging their finger at them and saying, oh, you have to put them first. You have to put everybody else before your own. And people are getting sick of this false religion that's being foisted on them. Because the left don't believe in Jesus. They just believe in anything that will get war so they can keep you in a situation where the taxes are high, NGOs are getting lots of money, and all these liberals can go to their NGOs and have six-figure welfare. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Really. Pearson Sharp has come out with an opinion that the American society is deeply divided over the conflict. Well, he actually said deeply divided, I think, in one statement I read, over the conflict of Ukraine. Well, maybe I'll stick to the situation here. Right, so America's divided in its perception of the conflict in Ukraine. Donald Trump seeks a peaceful resolution. That is sincere. Now, this is what he told TASS during his trip to Donetsk. It's rare for anybody to go out and see for themselves and find out what's going on. Now, Pearson Trump noted in his opinion, American society is divided. There are those who believe the propaganda, those who want to remove Russia from what they saw as Ukrainian territory, support the war, and believe everything they've heard in the media. And there's people who would just want the war to end. And I'm with the latter. I just want the war to end. I think by the time anybody unravels the situation in the history of Ukraine, will it make a difference? Will the left come to a different conclusion? No, they won't. They will always see Russia as the aggressor. They will always push Trump to call Russia the aggressor. And they will always push to have Russia removed from Ukrainian territory. They will always push to get their way. None of the left, Macron, Boris Johnson, none of them, and don't call him a conservative, he's a rat. None of them will go to Donetsk and speak to the people of Donetsk and go to the sites shelled by Ukrainian armed forces, or speak with the families of those in Donetsk have lost loved ones. They will not seek an end to the Ukraine war because it's a drain on the West, and anything to weaken the West so that we will give up our addiction to capitalism and and just print endless money so that the left can have their land of milk and honey and num on all the rich people's food. Because ultimately, what have they said? An end to oligarchs will eat the rich, says AOC. Look what happened when Russia ate the rich. Look at the 70 years of misery that the Russians went through. Look at Ukraine and its toxic relationship with its neighbours, putting its hand in everybody's pocket and never once contributing. Not since the 90s. And briefly, was Ukraine a peaceful country? It's always been in turmoil. It has huge problems. And the people don't realise that their expectations and their demands are the problem. Constantly believing sweet-talking politicians. But Alan Pierre Trizol has published an opinion in which he thinks European leaders, especially Macron, only serve the interests of the oligarchy. How often have we spoken of the WEF? Not often, no. There's very little that you can point to and say, these individuals in the WEF control Macron, and here's how they do it. They don't hold public meetings that often. They don't publish information that often. People claim to have inside information, but because it's only confined to the papers they hold up, showing you the blank side, of course, you really don't know. What we do know is that Macron is ideologically driven. That is a fact. Well, okay, that's an assessment that can be stood up to a political test, in that you hear stated his politics and political goals, and even when he's wrong, he just sticks by them. Okay, that's ideologically driven. That's an observation. Alain, however, believes that Moscow and Washington can find a way to agree to a ceasefire and long-term peace in Ukraine without Europe. Europe will not assist. Europe will do everything possible to prevent it. He is a French political commentator, so he's not just some random off the street. Perhaps Trump and Putin should meet with, the Ukrainian president. Find out what he needs to do and make it public. Perhaps there is a way to basically bring this to light, because, again, Alain is speaking his opinion. That his opinion is that European leaders, particularly a French leader, only serve the interests of the oligarchy, and that the oligarchy wants arms factories in France, particularly in Europe, but France. That a French oligarchy who controls Macron wants France to arm Europe, wants France to France and Germany and England to create a European army with Zelensky, not with Trump, to push Trump and the Americans out of Europe and to create a new European frontier and basically break up Russia. This is the greater European project, which was born on the desk of Mannerheim, who was the favourite advisor to the Mustache Man. If you don't believe me, don't believe me. You do not realise that the European Union was put together and backed by the oligarchy who destroyed Europe in the first place with their endless wars. In order to wage endless wars, again, the whole idea of uniting Europe was merely so that they could go back to the glory days and, have their great their great war, because none of them were happy with the outcome of either war. This is the problem with imperialists. They're never happy until they get more. If they can see it, they want it. But of course, it's not just foreign commentators from France. There's Belgium, Turkey, Brazil, and many other countries who have actually been to and seen what's happened in Ukraine, but they don't report on it. Well, there was a foreign there was a drama theatre, and I forget what the astral plant was, but they went there, inspected it. But where's the news stories? We're not getting them. We're not getting news stories. The media goes to Ukraine often, and we're not getting enough. We're not getting daily news. Often, we get the same stories as yesterday and the day before. Sometimes they'll run the same story for a week. Sometimes the same stories, all they do is just change the number of drones. Change the number who died, but it's always civilians, it's always women, it's always children, it's always Russia. It's never a battle that they report on. We don't know how these drones end up hitting a school, if they ever hit a school, because we're never showing anything close up. We're showing empty buildings with their windows blowing out. But we're told that they're a hotel, but we know they're not hotels. Tourists in the middle of the war, no. They're barracks. Now, Russia needs to understand, right? And if they want their side, of the story out there, they can't do it paddling up shit creek. They have to engage conversations on a daily basis, and they have to inform the world, not just from their platform, but they have to be backed by at least something tangible. They have to meet with Trump. They have to work with Trump. If they really want to end this war, they have to start working on a daily basis with Trump. That's the only way to do it now. It's the only way that to force the oligarchs back into the shadows, to bring everything out into the light, and otherwise, it's just going to further disintegrate the situation, and we'll end up with a catastrophe on our hands and Eastern Europe destroyed by conflict, just so the WEF can have its profits from the rebuilding of Ukraine and Eastern Europe. Well, until you take the profit out of war, there is going to be war. Just like refugees. As soon as they turn it into a for-profit interest, all the NGOs start bringing in refugees, creating any excuse. And you have the lawyers saying, oh, no, we need a trial, we need a fair hearing, we need a process. Nah, bro, you're not in charge. Yet that's exactly what we have. We have the bureaucrats, the lawyers, and the profiteers who keep reaching into our pockets, deciding that, nah, our tax dollars aren't for our schools, they're for Ukraine's war. We don't defend our borders, but we'll defend Ukraine's borders. We won't educate British boys and girls. No, we'll educate African boys and girls. Even though Africa wanted their independence and fought tooth and nail for it. Same with India. Why are we sending aid to India? They wanted independence. They fought us for it. India should have its independence. Every Indian should be headed home to be independent in India. How dare they get refugee status? That's a blatant abuse of the system, and it's backed by people who basically beat their chest because they want you to suffer. You don't like it, so they support it. That's the sad fact of politics today. Now, the Ukraine Armed Forces has now faced a problem. As reported by Sputnik, Starlink communications is blacked out along the entire front line. They're not claiming responsibility by the looks of it. They're just reporting on it. Sputnik noted that Starlink communications went down while they were, and according to the data detector, and then that's it. They don't provide any. It has sparked outrage. Now, one thing that you should notice, I remember seeing a survey of satellites before Elon Musk and SpaceX. There was 5,600 objects in orbit, mostly launched by the United States, followed by Russia, China, India, a few by Japan and other countries, and Europe. I think there was like one from Brazil or something, or some, not sure if it was Brazil or some other country. Since Elon Musk has launched more satellites than the rest of the world. Starlink, of course, has pretty much lines of satellites in orbit. Apparently, this network outage affects all of Ukraine. They're actively working on a solution. They haven't reported the cause of the problem. British newspaper reported that Starlinks was turned off. They have more than 6,000 satellites in orbit. They have more than 2 million users in 60 countries. Of course, the corporate users are the ones that are keeping it afloat. Otherwise, you wouldn't be relying on your $30 a month accounts. No. There's a lot more to this. Yeah. I don't have answers. I can't see the finances. It's a waste of time. I think we're looking into it. I don't think you'll ever get answers. I honestly think Starlink is being interfered with by a third party to create mayhem. This could be either an extortion from North Korea, allegedly, or another third party who have no interest in Ukraine succeeding. But I don't think Starlink is that effective as a tool of war. I think, sure, it's a great communications, but on the battlefield, homing missiles would home in on satellite communications. I honestly think it's just communications. It's not. I think they're greatly exaggerating what role Starlink plays. And, of course, the Russians and many others do not see the Ukrainians as Ukrainians, but as UK. Yeah, that's not helpful. But what is not reported, of course, is Russia advancing, and that happens almost every day in small increments. Another village, they average one a day. Sometimes they are retaking villages they've lost previously. Often, as you can see by the map, things are not reported or updated But we have a town here marked. Look, there we have the town officially marked off on the map, but the map updated to show exactly how much territory the Russians have taken. Again, it's a lot of these are small dots on the map. And some of them go here, I don't know, but there we have communications outreach in this area. I don't think the Russians have taken this. Where is it? I think we're back here. Positions. Russians had positions in here and around here and been pushed back here. They were pushed out of here and they lost positions here. And a week later, they've taken more territory than they lost previously. Overall, as I said, Ukrainians have moved men and machines up into this road. They are trying to secure the supply lines to Vovosk, realising that the Russians were pushing up long before I said the Russians would push up here to basically Cauldron and seal off Vovosk to force Ukrainians retreating up through up to here, cutting this off completely. Then even Russia may go up as far as here to basically cut all this off, come up through here. That still may happen. We don't know. It depends. I think more transparency will not just help end the Ukraine war. I think we'll look at the post-Ukraine war period, because there's clearly going to be a pre- and post-Ukraine war period of Russian relations, and it's going to take time and successive US presidents to normalise relations with Russia. But it's going to take, and I think a lot of people have noted this, it's like the Koreas. We have to wait for the old ones to die because the old ones cling to the war, they don't move on. And yeah, there's a lot of Europeans who won't forgive, a lot of Ukrainians who merely want revenge on Russia for the USSR, when in fact Ukraine helped create the USSR and won't admit it. Ukraine has had a toxic relationship with its neighbours and just won't accept its responsibility. And that's where we're at. We're at with a daily advance, and until people realise that the best opportunity to save lives is an immediate halt, that trying to force Russia out, you're just as bad as the left. Always wanting your way. You've got to compromise in this world. Otherwise, you just go mad. You become the left. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, which you can find in the description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Please and thank you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.